So tonight is going to be a little different, and I'm now the host. And there is a reason behind why I wanted to do this podcast, because in like many things in life, for me personally, is I'm always looking at things that are difficult for people, where people are having a difficult time in general, and trying to come up with ways to be able to help people. And so I started thinking about this idea of rebels and the idea of a rebel. And so in thinking about that, I thought, when you say, when you tell somebody that they're a rebel, their first response is to rise up in anger and get mad at you and tell you that they aren't, which kind of indicates that you're a rebel. But it's an interesting thing. But so I wanted to look at this and talk about it from that standpoint. And as I was thinking about this and thinking about Jordan and Elliot both being in a unique situations, both of them are related to me, son-in-law and son, and also as I'm their pastor. So it makes things even that much more difficult in terms of dealing with issues of rebellion. And over the years, they've both professed that they've had issues with this. And I had asked, I said, so what do you think about doing a podcast on Confessions of a Rebel? Because I wanted to do it from the standpoint of being able to help people. So we are opening this to questions. So this is going to be available for you to ask questions along the way. I may not get to them right away, but I will as I kind of glance over and I see them fit in. I'll put them in. But so kind of as a note, I put to myself is just to understand that this is not just questions as haloed angels, so the questions that come in tonight, not, so what made you decide to be a rebel after all, and what was it that was going on inside of you? This is a confession of former rebels, and it's all three of us, not just them, because I know what it means to be a rebel as well, just in a different way, because like I always say, I wasn't raised in church. And so I didn't learn how to be a rebel, church-wise. I learned how to be a rebel in the world, and became a punk rocker and all that. And was in rebellion against all kinds of things. And so I can speak, as equally to this situation. And so, but the difference being is because I was such a rebel before I became a Christian, that was actually part of my deliverance. It was like when a drug addict comes in and gets saved, that's one of the first things that happens is God helps them with their drug addiction. And so there's a similar sort of a thing in my life is starting off as a rebel, then getting saved and realizing that being a rebel was part of my problem. I was able to do it. And so let's get right into it. And I want to use a couple of scriptures here kind of to set the framework for it. Romans 13, verse 1 and 2, it says, let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. And then Hebrews 13, I don't know if God did this on purpose, but it's Romans 13 and Hebrews 13. Hebrews 13 says, verse 7, remember those who rule over you, who have spoken the word of God to you, whose faith follow, considering the outcome of their conduct. Obey those who rule over you, this is verse 17, and be submissive, for they watch out for your souls, as those who must give account. Let them do so with joy and not with grief, for that would be unprofitable to you. And so I got it. I got the idea, getting saved, that pastors, bosses, police, the government were all put in place by God. And rebelling against them was rebelling against God's authority, not their authority. And so let's get right into it. And I want to ask this as a question. Make sure I'm not out of the thing here. So what is a rebel? We need to answer that question. So if you're going to talk as former rebels, then we have to actually to establish, what does it mean to be a rebel?
Well, always having to do everything your own way. You're not able to do it anybody else's way.
Okay.
What he said.
Getting nervous?
I think just you're. Yeah, it's that really does sum it up. But just like basically not thinking that you have to be the one to make the decisions. Mm-hmm. So if somebody else has given you maybe some advice or something that would position you in like somewhat down a track of life, that you would say, I can't do that because somebody else told me that was what I should do. Mm-hmm. Because it has to be all me coming up with the decisions.
Okay. All right. So in my latest authority in my life, ChatGPT, I asked the definition for rebel, which I thought was a very interesting definition. And it said, a rebel is generally defined as a person who resists or defies authority, control, or tradition, often challenging established norms, rules, or systems. Rebels may engage in actions or behaviors that go against the prevailing social, political, or cultural order, expressing a desire for change or advocating for a different way of thinking or living. The term rebel can be applied in various contexts, such as political rebellion, social rebellion, cultural rebellion, and often conveys a sense of opposition to the status quo. Rebels may be motivated by a variety of factors, including a pursuit of justice, freedom, equality, or individual expression. And so what do you think of that? What do you think of that as a definition?
It definitely zooms way out and applies the idea of being a rebel to way more than just the individual. It's more of a mindset.
Okay. So does that describe what you were? And actually, I'll save that for another question. Does that describe what you were?
Yeah.
Okay. Any more than simple one-word answers?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of a concise answer, but I mean, growing up, that described me to the T. Even when I was in school, there was a way to do things in order to, be successful in school. It didn't matter what teacher it was or, their method of teaching. And, from school to home to church, those relationships always involved the relationships in school, at home, in church, always involved some level of authority over my life. Mm-hmm. And even in sports, which I loved sports, it was the same way. If I was told to do something I didn't want to do, there was a part of my nature that was very resistant to that. And it didn't matter what it was. It didn't matter what the end result was supposed to be or the potential through obedience would be. There was something natural in me that wanted to resist that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's different kinds of rebels, obviously, because as it mentioned here in that definition. And so I want to ask the question, is there a such thing as a good rebel?
I had a feeling you were going to ask that. Elliot, want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, that's entirely situational, isn't it? I think yes and no. I mean, I think then you have to go back to the definition of what a rebel is then, because what are you rebelling against? If you are being labeled a rebel, are you being labeled a completely dedicated, for example, if somebody's like rebelling against, limitations of the gospel, are they a rebel? Or are they actually completely committed to the leadership of Jesus Christ? Or, in a secular setting, you could say, the American Revolution was a bunch of rebels, right? Were they rebels? So that's that. I think the answer to the question could be no. There's no such thing as a good rebel, mainly from the standpoint of the fact that if you are positioning whatever they are rebelling from in a positive light, or good for society or is the right direction to go, then yeah, they would be a rebel against a positive or a good, you know, socialistic norm or establishment or, you know, or whatever, or set of rules or principles or, you know, a way to live life. So I think if you're trying to define somebody as a good rebel, that's obviously an oxymoron, because there isn't by definition that would be like saying a good pirate,
Yeah.
or a good thief, you know,
Yeah,
or a
yeah.
good. So you can't. That doesn't make sense. You know, you wouldn't say if somebody stole $100,000 from somebody else, and then somebody else came in and stole that $100,000 back and gave it back to its original owner, are they a thief? You know, so I
Yeah.
think that when you put these things in their proper perspective, you could say, yeah, the second guy was a thief. You know, this
Yeah.
guy's a rebel, sure, but
Yeah.
that doesn't define.
Yeah,
That's not the whole picture.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and that is really where I'm moving towards. Is that idea is there such thing as a good rebel, given the definition? You know, that the rebel is one who is defying authority or resisting authority, and so from a worldly sense, we would say that is the case, you know, because of like how America was founded. You would look at that and you would say that was a good thing. But because this is where I want to move towards, is the idea of resisting authority, and talking about the idea of resisting authority, which is the essence of what it means to be a rebel. You mentioned the resistance against England, you know, in becoming an independent country, and all that was involved in that. You know, the question isn't, was that a good rebellion? The question is, was it a rebellion at all? You know, in the true sense of the term, like what we're talking about, were they actually defying authority? Because that wasn't how they set out to do. They wanted to live a certain way, and this was the reason why they came to the United States. And England was oppressing that and keeping that from being the case. And so everything just kind of blew up, and then it became something else. And so we're not just looking at people who are rebels. And the reason why I think that that's very important is because, as I described, when I came into the church, I realized, you know, getting saved, I realized that something, you know, there was a thing that I was in the world that was okay in the world, you know, being a punk rocker and, you know, being counterculture and all those kinds of things. That was a positive thing. That was looked at as a positive thing as a rebel. But becoming a Christian, I had to let that go. You know, I couldn't hang on to that anymore. I couldn't just convert that into, you know, Christian rebellion. And there was a moment where I actually thought, wow, you know, being a Christian is really cool, because you can rebel against everything, you know, because God's against the world. And so I can be a big rebel against the world. But then I started realizing that it's not that Christianity or Jesus is in rebellion to the world. It's that the world was in rebellion against God. You know, it was the other way around. So God wasn't, and Christianity isn't a rebellion against the world. Christianity is the way things are supposed to be, and the world is rebelling against that. And so I started to realize there's no place for the rebel, you know, when it comes to Christianity. And in a biblical level, we don't have that opportunity or that liberty to be able to be a rebellion, because since the idea of the word rebel has to do with resisting or defying authority, can you be a rebel and also be a Christian? In other words, is it okay to defy authority from a biblical perspective? I want to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, how do you define defy? Because like what you're talking about, yeah, but like, yeah. So okay, yeah. So to resist literally, because to like, when you think about, you know, talking about England and then even thinking biblically, and I was thinking about David and Saul. Saul is in authority, and David didn't resist him, but he kind of took himself out from underneath him because Saul was wrong, and he knew Saul was being unrighteous. And so, like, it's
How did he take himself out from underneath him?
well, I mean, he ran away, went to another country, so he fled, right?
For his life.
Yeah, exactly.
But
so he wasn't resisting him, but
Yeah.
but
That was going to be my point.
Yeah.
So is David saying, because of the way Saul is acting, I'm going to rebel
yeah.
and I'm going to go in this direction? Or is he just trying to stay alive? Is that and can that be considered rebellion if you're just trying to stay alive?
I think you should ask Absalom. You can ask David's son that same question.
Yeah.
Here are two, if you will, generations, right? Because there's Saul, David as Saul's subordinate, and then Absalom as David's subordinate.
Yeah.
And if you put the comparisons together, you could say, here's David, who is still in full allegiance for all intents and purposes. He's still in allegiance to Saul and to his reign.
Right.
He never once took all of his armies against Saul.
Right.
He never, Saul pursued him into the hills.
Yeah.
Saul, he was hunting him like a dog.
Yeah.
It's like that he was
so is that
campaign against him.
Can that be considered resisting if he's being hunted like a dog and he knows that Saul can kill him? Should he just go, well, I guess it's just the end of my life then? I mean, would that be a non-rebel approach?
No, because I think that I think actually this comes into the equation. To him to know to do good and does not do it, to him is a sin. You have responsibility to life. You have a responsibility towards doing right, right? And so when your life is threatened, there are natural things that God has put in humanity to preserve life, right? To stay alive, So when somebody points a gun at you, you're going to go into fight or flight, right? So you're running for a defense, but that's the problem that we keep coming back to. Well, define pointing a gun. What does that mean, threatening? What does that mean, And that's, I hope I'm not going into our future point here.
No, it's fine.
But that's the problem is when you're the one deciding what the threat is, I think that's where you get into trouble because it's easy. Absalom is, I want to do my thing. I should be king.
Right.
Why?
Right,
Because why? Because right. And what's the threat here? What's at stake here?
Right.
And so here David is what's at stake is, look, I'm either alive or dead. I'm gonna choose to be alive. You can't fault him for that. Whereas his Absalom's choices were very different.
Clearly the scripture says rebellion is sinful. It's sin, flat out. Like there's nothing in the Bible that ever says rebellion's a good thing.
Right.
And so the simple answer to can you be a rebel and a Christian is absolutely not.
Okay. So in establishing that, and that's really where I wanted to go with this is, because like I said, we're calling this confessions. So both of you, or the good majority of your life, have been Christians, right? In the sense of you are believing in God, aspiring to go to heaven, that kind of a thing. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're questioning it.
No.
You were heathen.
I was unconverted
Well, let's go.
religious nut.
Right. But let's go. Okay. Yeah. But let's go.
Bad.
Let's go a little further down the
Professing
road.
to be a Christian, maybe.
Let's do it this way. Let's start from, when I came here then. When you made the decision to become a Christian back in 19 or what was it?
I'm not that old, man. 2008, I think.
Yeah, 2008. Yeah, that's what it was, 2008. When you made that decision, and now we're looking at the last 16 years or so, let's just talk about that period of time then. So that we're talking about a time where you made a decision, but yet you were still rebelling. The play that you did had a lot, showed that. you know, that here you are, you're in church, but you're doing things that you know you shouldn't be doing, and I don't care, and all this kind of stuff. And so what I'm getting at is the mindset, because I really do believe. So my hope in this podcast, really more than anything else, I'll just go ahead and give the short version, is I don't believe that there's anything that can be done to help a rebel. Once somebody's already made the decision to make a rebel, I don't think there's anything that a human being can do to help them anymore. I think they're gone. It's over when they get to that point where they've decided, you know, this is how I'm going to be. They resist authority and those kinds of things. I don't think there's anything that humanly that can be done anymore. I think it's a line that's crossed. And I think Saul's a good example of that, because it seems like many, many times he's trying to get out from underneath that, but just becoming more and more of a rebel. You know, I need to hear from God, so he goes to a witch. You know, it's like he's just, and God has condemned witchcraft, you know, and so it's like, you know, it's like there's the lights aren't on anymore. You can't see anymore. My hope in this podcast is for those who are leaning in that direction and that are engaging in rebellious behavior, to see the danger of it. And that's really what I'm after. And so for your life, both of you, you know, being a Christian, but going down the road of rebellion, you know, let's hear some, you know, what are some of the things that were the results of, well, let's look at it. Let's say it in this way first. What was it that made you think that it would be beneficial, you know, to resist authority, to rebel, you know, and maybe just give some examples of what that looked like?
I don't honestly think I had a very good understanding of what authority was, because the truth is I always saw authority figures as equal with myself. I never had this defined line in my mind that said this person is above me in authority, whether it's, you know, in the church or outside of the church. Like,
so that's an interesting concept, and that's what I want to get at, because I think that is really a mark of, you know, somebody who's a rebel. And so what I'm thinking about is, you know, so you didn't know that there were people that were over you? I mean, this was just something you just didn't get, you know, I mean, that you really genuinely didn't understand that there were people like, you know, parents or teachers, you saw them as peers. I mean, and there was, or are you know, elaborate on that.
Yeah. I think it was a slightly more subconscious than that. Like it wasn't that I was consciously thinking, oh, well, you can't tell me what to do. We're the same. You know, I knew people were in authority, but like in my mind, it was people can't force me to do anything. Mm-hmm. And so if I don't want to do it, then you can't force me because you're not that type of authority figure. And so, you know, if a police officer came and told me what to do, I would do it just so I could avoid being forced to do something else. But the second they were gone, I did what I wanted to do.
Okay.
And so it was the idea of, well, as long as I can just function without people even having to be involved with telling me what to do or forcing me to do something else, I can get away with it.
Okay, so that's a very interesting concept, because because what I'm getting at, because you were raised in church, and so you heard about issues of authority and those kinds of things, and so was it so much that you didn't understand it, or was it that you refused to accept it?
Probably the latter. Yeah.
Okay, because that's what I'm trying to get a kind of a handle on, is, you know, the sort of root, you know, of what causes somebody to rebel. So in your case, you know, you guys, I was going to mention this in the beginning and I forgot. You guys, you are rebels in two different ways. I mean, you're not in rebellions in the same ways. Like your issues were more rebellion against, you know, doing the right thing, whereas yours was more focused on me in particular. And so how did you like what I just described with Jordan, how were you able to do that? How were you able to make that disconnect and to say, I don't need to listen to my dad. I don't need to listen to authority figures in my life. I can do what I want. How did that work out for you? I mean, what was the...
Yeah, that'd be hard to be able to say there was like one or even two things that would be.
Well, I'm looking
So I
for a
can-
progression. Was
Yeah, I
what
can
was the
say-
progression? Like maybe in your teenage years or whatever.
Yeah, that's tough because that's a hard question to answer. So I'll do my best.
Yeah.
Is basically to the I think it was just like a subset of different circumstances in our lives, like growing up in our environment and stuff like that, as far as like being on the pioneer field and stuff like that. I wouldn't say that these were the cause of that. It's like, no, I was triggered by this or something. Just my interpretation of actions taken, things that were said, and I would actually chalk a lot of it up to miscommunication, misunderstanding. There's a lot of things that were said that I didn't really think to take the time to try and understand. You know, things that were said to me that I would think like, man, that's a really crappy thing. And so I would tell other people in my life about things that had happened between us. And it's, man, your dad said that? Your dad's a jerk, man. And he's a pastor, you know, so forth and so on. And, you know, because I'm telling it in the context of the way that I understood it.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you're doing that and I guess I'm actually kind of getting to a point here is that I relied only on my own filter of understanding. And so, you know, and I allowed that filter to be defined by, you know, people who agreed with my analogies, my echo chamber, if you will.
Right.
And so when I would get frustrated about something, I would talk to somebody else who I knew would probably agree with that statement. And so over time, doing this over and over and over again kind of started to get me bolder and bolder and bolder to a point where it was like, listen, Dad, screw you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't need to listen to this. I don't know why you think you're even a man of God at this point.
Right.
You know, I don't know. And so forth and so on. And so, but the progression was a really slow progression, and it was just really small things.
And it's very interesting. You're hitting on some things here that I really wanted to bring out because I think it's so critical to understand the raw material that makes up becoming a rebel. And so you're bringing some of that out. And so in your case, then let's kind of look at that a little bit. What was it like? So Elliot, I mean, that was perfect because that's exactly what I wanted you to bring out. And so there were things that I said that you thought were wrong, and you mentioned them to other people who also thought they were wrong and agreed with you. And so this created an environment where you understood that you were under a bad authority figure, right?
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah. Okay. And so for you, I don't think it's the same thing, is it? It's a little different. Yeah. So explain for you how did it work? So because what I'm getting at is what justified the rebellion is what I'm getting at. And so for Elliot, what justified the rebellion was because of things that I said that he didn't agree with and that he had talked to other people who didn't agree with as well. And so he had an environment of people that were convinced that I was the problem and convinced him that he was the problem, and he was already convinced that I was the problem. And so therefore that justified the rebellion. And so what justified your rebellion?
Man. The only way I can really describe it is just straight up mind spirals. And it would, I mean, even to the point where I'd be reading my Bible and I'd find it's, specifically talking about my relationship with you, but it like I can literally name other people who it was the same thing.
Yeah.
And, or I'd hear a sermon. I was like, oh man, they should be listening to this sermon. And I was constantly looking for justifications through anything. and I would hear things. I'd hear stories. I'd hear other people's opinions. I would hear, and I wouldn't necessarily vocalize that as often. Honestly, I didn't really mention it to a lot of people. I didn't have a lot of conversations with people where I was like, I really disagree with what this person's doing. I just heard other people say stuff.
So is it a similar thing as him? Is that you disagreed with those who were in authority, and therefore you could justify rebelling against that authority?
Yeah.
Does that?
Sometimes I just felt like I just didn't like people. It wouldn't be a specific thing.
Right.
It wouldn't be a thing they were doing.
But the baseline. So even though it had different manifestations, the baseline for both of you, the baseline was the fact that you were able to justify the rebellion because of your relationship with that headship or that authority in your life. That you could look at this and you could say, I don't need to listen to that, because I don't agree with it, or it's out of line or something along those lines. I mean, even like you could read the Bible, and like you said, and you could read the Bible, you could hear sermons, and there would be things that would come to mind. So is that a fair baseline to say that? Because this is my take on rebellion, and the difficulty with rebellion is that element of justification. And so the idea of being able to justify that rebellion, I think, is like everything in life, we want to justify, but justifying that. And this is kind of what I wanted to get at, because when you talk about justifying rebellion because those that are in authority over you don't measure up, biblically speaking, is that okay? These people are off the wall. I've said things and done things that I shouldn't do, and you've told other people about it, and they've confirmed that that's right. He shouldn't have said those things. That's wrong. He's out of line to say those kinds of things. Does that now dismiss you from the need to be submitted to that authority, biblically speaking?
I'm sorry.
It's strictly in our context?
Well, not strictly, but the idea of, okay, I'm under a leader who I have the goods on. Okay.
Are you talking, so real quick, just because I think these things are important to clarify.
Yeah.
This is the problem with rebellion, is it's like dropping a shoebox full of insects on the floor. There's so many little things that really do matter.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the spirit of rebellion is such a horrible spirit to have, because it can find its way to justify itself in everything, right? Mm-hmm. So this isn't an effort to try to clarify that, but the issue is when you just said you're saying, oh, I've got the goods. I'm genuinely hey, my leader's in sin, or he's preaching false doctrine.
Yeah, all of it.
Flat out.
Yeah, all of it. I don't care what it is. You caught him in bed with some other girl.
Does that
now free you from?
I'm assuming you mean in a pastoral context.
Biblically,
right?
Biblically speaking, does that free you from that environment?
I don't think it frees you from the leadership chain. And that's Christianity in general doesn't always have that privilege, right? We are privileged in the fellowship to have a chain of command, right? That doesn't mean, okay, cool, I get to pick my pastor now.
Okay.
But it does mean you have a responsibility now.
Okay.
To make things right. Okay, you found out information that's.
But let's say I didn't. Let's say I didn't have anybody over me. I'm the top, and you've got the goods on me.
In a church, you're talking.
Well, I'm talking biblically.
Yeah, you're talking biblically.
I'm talking biblically. I'm not talking about in the church. I'm talking biblically.
Yeah. So no, clearly no, you're still not free from it, because if God's the one that sets authority in place, then He's the one that deals with the authority. Right. He sets one up and brings another one low, and so David's another good example of that, and we talked about that a second ago. But David didn't resist Saul.
Yeah. He
simply fled for his life. Yeah. And so obviously David had to wait, and he even said the other people tried to kill Saul, or the guy that actually said he killed Saul.
Yeah.
David slew him.
So here is what I'm getting at, because I believe that this is the root of all rebellion. Is this is the root of what causes people to become rebels, is that there is a moment, or maybe not, I mean, moment might be too specific, but there is a time where you are no longer, God no longer expects you to submit to that authority. And that you can go too far to where you can say, Lord, am I free? And the Lord says, yes, you are, my son. They've gone too far. And biblically, that's not true, is it?
No.
And so that's what I'm getting at. And this is the thing, that if you're listening right now and you are on the road to rebel, you're getting upset right now, because you are thinking of people in your life that are over you, that it's not right for them to be over you because they are, in your thinking, unrighteous. But the question that I'm asking is, biblically speaking, does God say you are now released from what I've said in my word? And the answer is no. And so the scriptures that I read early, about being subject to the governing authorities, being subject to those who have the rule over you, those are not, they are not, there's not a condition or a place to where you are free from that, because God's the one who sets those people in place. And so the root of rebellion, and why this is so difficult, is that we are all going to eventually, at some point in our lives, come to the realization that the guy, the girl, whoever is in authority over me is human. And now what? I thought they were perfect. I thought they were like angelic and just, angels in human bodies.
Yeah, there's this thing that's like, it's become really prominent. Like, people that are not saved like do this, oh, I thought you were a Christian thing.
Yeah.
But that's actually now bled into like the base level of the church, which is, well, you're a pastor. You should never say something rude to me.
Yeah.
You should never make a comment to me that would otherwise, offend me or something like, not in the context of like a scripture that I didn't like being used on me. Yeah. Just like, you should never have a personality conflict with me.
Right. Yes.
That's you're not entitled to that.
And if you do, then I am free.
Right.
And that is the core of where rebellion finds a home inside of a person, and they can begin to rise up. Because if you think about, so in your life, there may be more than one moment, but the moments where you released yourself from the situation of authority, do you remember any of those moments of?
Yeah, that's why I was having a hard time answering this question, because I don't think it's a moment. There's definitely a lot of things.
Yeah, a lot, but
led up
think
to
of
it.
Yeah, but no.
So decisions were made already.
Yeah, but the moments. What I'm getting at is the moment where you actually, and Jordan, you chime in as well, when you released yourself from the responsibility to be submitted to authority. Something that happened, some conflict, some issue in your life where you said, that's it. And you pulled the plug on your submission to that authority.
Like I said, there's a number of things.
Yeah,
like,
I don't want all of them.
It's hard to say, no, this was it. I remember
No.
January.
I'm not. I'm just talking in general. I'm just talking in general. Not the worst of the worst, where you unplugged forever. I mean, just times where you pulled the plug, because you've as a rebel, we pull the plug a lot. Like before I became a Christian, it started with my parents. is because my parents were not doing well. They were divorcing. And so it was like, I don't need to listen to them anymore. And then, when I moved out of the house, so I was 17 and a half. I wasn't quite 18. And so, but I moved out of the house and it was like, I'm an adult because I've moved out of the house. I don't have to turn 18 to be an adult.
Yeah.
I'm an adult now because I don't live in the house anymore and I don't have to listen to you anymore.
Yeah. Okay. I think I can answer the question then. So the Bible says the rebellion is like the sin of witchcraft. Right. So, and I think there is a moment where it's like, and we were talking about this a little bit on the phone when we were talking about doing this podcast, is that like witchcraft in the sense I put the pieces together to think it's like having a spell cast on you, so to speak.
Yeah.
You just all of a sudden start functioning in some particular direction. And I think that, if you break it down, like the rebellion, I would say for myself, beginning to act out my rebellion is because it started feeling really good to do that. Kind of like it feels really good.
But give me some concrete examples.
Maybe which one?
Pick one.
I can
go ahead.
while you
Go
think.
ahead.
Yeah, there's definitely more than one, but and this was they were moments like I'd kind of ebb and flow. I'd start doing well, and then kind of get back down, and there would be something that was like, no, forget this, I'm done.
Right. And so give an example.
One of those was when I was struggling in my mind, and just tons of different things that had built up in my mind, and it was a buildup. There were all these little issues, and I constantly was thinking about these issues over and over again, and it was on my mind. And you would do something or say something that would like refresh that feeling again. Like you would just say something, and I would think, oh, that was rude, or oh, that was aimed at me, or something like that. And I remember, I'm working there. Hold on,
because I don't want this to become just clinical.
So
conversation
So
about
it was
rebellion.
What happened was I was having a conversation with a pastor, a friend of mine, and he vocalized. He said, I know your pastor can be rude. He said, I know he can be this way.
Yeah.
And the second he said that, I was like, he feels the same way I do.
Yeah.
And right away, I lost respect for you. Like it was like I am not alone.
Right.
And this is a fact. It's no longer my opinion. It's a fact. This is who he is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it changed my opinion about you, or I should say, it solidified my opinion about you at the time. And so that just led me into a whole spin of, stupid decisions, and basically came to church with a horrible attitude. It was no longer praying. I was like, just done being a disciple.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're getting to the core issue, because this is the interesting thing, is that was there ever a time where you hit one of those moments of revelation where you realized, and it's been confirmed, that you are being pastored by a horrible human being? You made that decision, and then good things started happening.
Never.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because that's never how it is, right? Because that's too close to okay, that's starting to sound like rebellion. I think that's why I said the analogy of a shoebox full of insects, is because you can't, it's so, once it starts crawling, it's like, wait, where do they all go, right?
Yeah.
It's, rebellion is never, I hope you don't mind, but Brittany actually asked this question. She said,
sorry, I didn't realize there was 10 questions.
She said, well, I'll read it because I think this is kind of really important to this point of the conversation.
Are you going to give examples yet? Or?
A dumb question.
No, he hasn't. He's rebelling.
But how do you know if you're in rebellion? That's the problem, is these instances, that's why it's honestly, it's hard for me to give the exact, like you said, the moment, right? Because nothing ever felt like the moment.
Yeah.
But then I look back in hindsight.
Let me just have a quick look at the things here. So, Jordan, did you have respect for your biological parents, or were you rebellious with them? That's really not where we wanted to go with that. In other words, was the rebellion directed towards someone representing God, or was your mind set on, no, I won't obey?
I kind of already answered that question anyway.
Yeah, you did. So it might be a dumb question, but how do you know if you're in rebellion? Okay, yeah, right. What if your pastor really is wrong? What's the difference between rebellion and questioning? And so this is where I want to go, because this is very, very important. And it is from that standpoint, is that, because we've already established the fact that it's never, it's never, biblically speaking, no matter, even if you have a legitimate grievance against authority figures in your life, we are never released from that issue of authority ever. And so how do you know when you are a rebel? Is you are a rebel when you resist the authority figures in your life, regardless of who they are, regardless of their integrity, regardless of how they've treated you. None of those factors play into that. When you read these scriptures are telling us how we're supposed to be. It's not telling us how our leaders are supposed to be. It's telling us how we're supposed to be. And that's all that should be our concern. But that's why I wanted to bring out that idea, is that, for specifics, of the specifics, because what I'd like to hear, and I can say this, and you can say, well, it never happened that way, but that's what I want to see is I want to see, so give some examples of some of the ways that you've made these decisions. You said, okay, this is the way it is. Like you said, it's solidified in your mind. It's solidified that, I can be rude, and it was authenticated by another pastor. And so because it was authenticated, you saw that as an open door, whether by God or just within yourself, doesn't really matter, but an open door that you are no longer held accountable to that authority situation. And then the next words that came out of your mouth, and that's when I started making dumb decisions.
Yeah.
Right away. So clearly, and this is the important thing to see, is that if we zoom out, God's looking at this whole scenario, and God doesn't come and go, I'm going to now bless your life because you made a righteous choice. Yeah. In fact, it goes the other way. It's all of a sudden the Holy Spirit is no longer helping you, no longer dealing with you. You stop praying. Why do you stop praying? Well, you stop praying because the Holy Spirit is not stirring you to pray. Yeah. Because that's why we do any of the things we do. The reason why we pray, the reason why we serve God, the reason why we do any of the things we do is because the Spirit of God is there leading us and directing us. And we are being led by the Spirit. That's the whole idea. So you make those kinds of decisions, and the Spirit is no longer leading you anymore.
See, like, I think like that would be a key area for me, is that I would say a launch point is when you become a lawyer. Like, so this morning, did the Holy Spirit stir you to get out of bed this morning? Right? And so tell me what it felt like.
Yeah.
Right? And so, that's, I think it's when you're challenging your authority.
I get what you're saying. I get the idea that you're trying to bring out, but the problem is that's not even a valid question. That's
the point. These are not valid questions.
Yeah, it's not a valid question. It's just it's like the
it's the point where you've decided you're going to rebel, and now you're just making a case for it.
Well, it is, but I mean to zoom out and to see, because nobody feels something, that the Holy Spirit is doing to me. It's not, you don't all of a sudden go, the Holy Spirit is dealing with me about something. That's not how it works.
Well, but that's what I just
said.
There's
an inspiration.
That's the point.
So there's no,
I've now
defined
something, and I'm now trying to make you
so the
go
question,
by this definition.
Yeah, so the question is that, tell me, did the Holy Spirit get you out of bed this morning? That is the type of question that is simply a justification for where you are. Yeah. Because the answer, there is only one answer. The answer is no, he didn't. Mm-hmm. Even when the Holy Spirit did wake you up and inspired you to pray, mm-hmm. the answer is still no. I don't know if the Holy Spirit woke me up this morning. I don't know. So it's not it's the answer to the question doesn't take us anywhere. And so, but that's what I wanted. This is the thing I wanted to bring out, is that because there's that side of it, which we'll deal with that a little bit later, is because that's a further part of the rebellion. Is I want to just the fruit of it is that when you are rebelling, you're not doing well spiritually. They go hand in hand. They go hand in hand. And the evidence of you not doing well spiritually, or sorry, the evidence of rebellion is that you're not doing well spiritually. So if you think, well, I've been in church and I'm not doing well spiritually, it's because you're a rebel. You know, it really is that simply. Oh no, I'm not a rebel. No, it's because you are a rebel. You know, and a rebel is somebody who does not submit to authority. You know, that's the biblical element of it. And so to answer the question, what's the difference between rebelling and questioning? Is the rebellion is not a question. You're not questioning when you're rebelling. You're not questioning. You're making decisions. You're choosing what you're going to do. And, you know, like you said, so here, this guy's this guy, yeah, I know your pastor can be rude. This connects to you. It gives you the excuse you were looking for to unplug. And so now you're unplugged. Okay. Well, there was no question anywhere. You know, there was no conversation. There was no desire to try to understand. There wasn't any of that. It was just simply, I'm just pulling the plug. And that's the difference, is it's not questioning. A rebel is not somebody who's questioning. That's the issue. If you're somebody who's questioning and trying to gain understanding, then you're not a rebel, you know. But when you're making decisions and you're pulling the plug, well, now you're a rebel. And that's the issue when it comes right down to it. And so, but I wanted to get some examples out of this, because I'm convinced that, that the vast majority of the examples that you could give, that would be the result. You made this decision. You said, I'm going to do this way, being justified. Not I'm going to be a rebel, but I'm justified in my position. I don't have to do this anymore. What came next? You know, and that element of it is what I want to hear, is the what came next. And so, do you have any?
Wait, the unplugged part or the what came next?
What came next?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, the unplug and then what came next. And I want you to show me if there was a time where you did that, you unplugged, and you actually started to experience the blessing of God. Now, you might look at that now as a former rebel and say, what are you talking about? This is the issue, is that we often in the moment think that it's a blessing when we rebel, isn't it? You think there is a blessing. There seems to be this almost release, this sense of exoneration. You know, I'm sorry to give a less heavy word than that, but it's just like, I'm free, I'm free now. But then, like you said, you start making these dumb decisions.
Yeah. So looking back, they were dumb decisions, but at the time,
right,
what I started doing, and honestly, it never felt like blessing. And I'm looking back kind of as,
yeah, be careful not to look back.
No.
With the right eyes. Yeah, Try to be where you were before.
It's at the time, I literally was like, it's only a matter of time before God gets this guy out of here.
Yes.
He's gonna be replaced by somebody.
Right.
And so the thing is, like, after that, it was like, I no longer wanted to be in ministry. I was in ministry, and so I was still doing things, but I had absolutely no excitement or enthusiasm behind it.
Right.
I was literally just going through the motions and waiting for you to leave.
Right.
And I was convinced that was going to happen.
Right.
And you would say things sometimes, that little thoughts of, well, I don't know, maybe we'll go overseas again and stuff like that. Or, Taiwan's open. I remember that was a conversation a while back, and you were considering that and praying about it. And in my mind, I think he's going to go. He's really going to go. We're going to get a better guy in here, somebody who actually knows what they're doing and isn't rude and isn't, as abrasive as he is. And so all these things are going through my mind, but I never felt, and even then I didn't feel like I was doing well. I thought I was doing bad, but only because you were in charge.
Right.
And it wasn't ever like now I'm doing really well. Like I wasn't winning people.
Yeah.
I was not influential with people. I felt like I would say things and they would just totally fall on deaf ears in the church and outside the church. Mm-hmm. My relationship with my wife was very, very strained, and it was very and I wouldn't share a lot of these things with my wife. I wouldn't vocalize mainly because she's your daughter. And so I knew it wouldn't necessarily go well every time. And so I went into this stagnant state where I was literally just existing in the church, and I wasn't doing well.
Go on.
But I blamed you for all of it.
Yeah.
That was the thing.
Yeah, but that's
Sorry, I'm just absorbed into your story. I wasn't even thinking about.
yeah. See, these are the
Trying to give
things
you time here,
because
man.
because you know at this point in our conversation, I'm not going to defend the fact that whether or not I'm rude or abrasive or I'm not going to defend any of those things. Let's say they're all 100% true. How did that work for you?
Yeah. Clearly not.
You decided you're going to fight fire with fire. And how did it work out? Tell me about the benefits and the blessings and how God was able to open doors in your life. Your life was expanded and things got better and things improved and open doors. I mean, in your case, I wish you would talk a little bit more, because in your case, you got away. You were out from underneath. You were, gosh, how old were you at the time? 18? Not very old.
Which instance of rebellion are we talking about?
When you went to Amarillo,
Uh-huh.
when you left Amarillo, how old were you?
21.
Was it 21?
20 or
So 21, so still quite young, and now you're free. Now you're free from that, miserable so and so. So that means now you just advanced, right? In the things of God, things just went on, and everything was wonderful because you finally got out from underneath that bad leadership, which was the problem. I know I'm saying that a little sarcastically, but so what happened?
Just a little sarcastic.
I was gonna say, well, I was there for a while, so that's a lot. So
How did it roll? Well, just start working your way through. How did it roll? I mean, how did it work out?
Well, I mean, there's that situation is definitely. I think it is a bit unique because like the people of Amarillo and stuff like that were very like super gracious.
Yeah.
They were
Yes.
very
Yeah.
accommodating and hopeful.
Yes.
And looking for redemption and
Yes.
looking for
Yeah.
for all that. And so
Yeah.
like being
And
in
so-
that environment, I would probably say like like for every element of like correction that was there, it was like, well, I have to. It was kind of in a way, it's like I would listen, but I would listen because I got to make this work, right? Because if this doesn't work, then I should have stayed, right? Sort of thing. And so that's
So my question, this is what I'm getting at, is so you left because I'm the bad guy, I'm the problem. You left, and so now you're no longer in that environment. So now there's no reason at all to be a rebel. So now you are no longer a rebel, right? When you're in Amarillo, you're there free from rebellion now, just serving God. I mean, that would be the logical conclusion.
what's the question? I'm sorry.
So when you went to Amarillo, you were there. You were out from underneath, me and all that. And so you now became submitted to your pastor, headship, and everything just went on from there. I mean, I know the story, so it's hard for me to pretend like I don't know what happened.
I think maybe it sounds like you're going somewhere in particular.
No.
So
I'm not
let's do
going
that.
somewhere in particular. I'm just asking you to describe how things went, because what I'm getting at is if the problem was the authority figure in your life, the absence of that authority figure should make that problem go away.
The problem of rebellion in general?
Yeah.
I think maybe if there's different circumstances that don't like scrape up against, my will, maybe. Like I said, like, Emerald's very redemptive and people really wanted to see a win out of this. And
so you stopped rebelling. That's my question.
I don't think I was put in a lot of situations that would challenge that, I would say.
Okay, so that never happened. You didn't. You weren't in a situation.
Well, I mentioned
where,
earlier, anytime that I kind of like was, if I were challenged.
Do I need to remind you?
Well, that's why I'm asking. You must be after something specific.
I'm not after
here.
something in particular. There's just, I could, off the top of my head, I can name 5 or 6, 7 times that had nothing to do with me whatsoever, that you actually, while you were there, called me that were moments of rebellion. Clearly, emphatically in rebellion.
Oh, like with what was going on in Amarillo.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't put the pieces together there. Oh, no, yeah, absolutely. I had a lot of problems with decisions that were made, the times where I thought I should have gotten a position or gotten recognition for something.
Right.
Or I wanted things to go a certain way. And
To the point to where you went to another church service
Yeah.
at another church.
Right.
And left the church
Yes.
and said, forget that church. I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Yes.
So that sounds like rebellion.
Yes.
But I'm not there. And I'm not having anything to do with that. So why didn't it go away when you were free?
Because.
Because?
Well, rebellion is a heart problem.
Right.
That's what
Yeah.
we're.
So what I'm
throwing
getting
out
at,
there.
it's not that I'm trying to put you on the spot. I'm just, maybe you're not connecting to.
Well, I'm not
to
sure
what
where we're going.
Yeah. Well, it's not, no, don't. Okay. I should have said that at the beginning. Don't be guarded that I'm going to get you in an aha moment, because that's not the idea. I just want to bring to the surface the realities of the mind, like what we call this, confessions from former rebels. Being able to look back, the things you thought that were going to be beneficial, the decisions that you made that you thought were going to take you forward, that were made in rebellion. Where did they take you? You know, that's what I want to bring out is, where did they take you? So you're in a situation where you have a pastor who's very, like you said, very not like me, you know, not like maybe polar opposite of me. And so now you're
By opinion, that's a matter of opinion. I wouldn't say it's a
well.
matter of fact.
I'm just trying to create a scenario here that I'm the bad guy
Okay,
and he's
I'm
the
sorry,
good guy.
I'm not sure what.
Yeah, no, I'm the bad guy. He's the good guy. But even though he's the good guy, you're still a rebel against the good guy. And I might even say good guys, because you had your run-ins with the assistant pastor and so the point that I'm making is that if other people are the problem, then rebellion should cease when those people are not in the picture anymore. And the point that I'm trying to bring out, and like I said, because my hope is for those leaning in that direction, they may not even know me or know anything about me or who I am, but are in a scenario where they're in that rebel feedback loop of, I'm under a bad leader. And if I can get out from underneath a bad leader, then my life will get better. And that's what I'm trying to bring out is you actually got out from underneath the bad leader and it didn't get better, And so what that shows us when it comes to the issue of rebellion is a problem for the rebel. It has nothing to do with the outward things, and that's the thing that I want to bring out. Is rebellion specific or does it spread? Like you're rebelling against your original pastor and leave, would you eventually rebel against the next? Okay, yeah, yes. And so that's the thing is that this is the point that I wanted to bring out is rebellion is a state of being. And it doesn't matter what caused that. And so like we see with David and Saul would have been a great catalyst for David to become a rebel. He would have been an ideal catalyst. Yeah. But David didn't become a rebel, And so you can't, it's not, the catalyst is not the thing that's at fault. It's the giving in to the spirit of rebellion that's at fault. And so it carries on. And so Brittany asked the question, and that is the issue, is that once the individual, so this is true, so it's not so focused on a personal situation that we're talking about. If you're working a job and you have a problem with your boss and you can't deal with that and you quit because of your boss, you can be sure that you're going to quit your next job as well, and the one after that, and the one after that, and the one after that, because that's rebellion. It's an issue that's in your heart that's going to affect your existence. And if you can't deal with that, and get that out of your system, then you're going to have a real problem being able to keep a job, because there's no such thing as a perfect boss. And that was why I thought this was a great example, is that, your pastor is his approach to family life is different from mine. They're very, very super family oriented, and their family's very, very tight. And, our family has been, more focused on the kingdom of God, destiny, the church, the purposes of God. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm saying that they're going in completely different directions, and it's two sides of the same coin, I should say, but they're going a different way, and you're able to be in both of those, and it doesn't change you. And you see what I'm saying? So it didn't change you, because the environment is not the problem. The problem is what's going on inside of our own hearts. And even in an ideal environment, you're not going to get anywhere with this. And so I think, as we're at 8 o'clock here, 8:06, what I want to, we kind of covered this already, that, but I'll ask it as a question from your point of view. Does being a rebel help being a Christian in any way in your life? When you look backwards, did it help your Christianity at all in any way by being a rebel?
No.
Okay, so there was no.
That's a really hard answer
Okay,
to answer
so
without one word.
There's no special grace.
Yeah.
There's no blessing that comes as a result from rebellion. There's never. So from your own experience, when you think back on it, was there times, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to not be contradicted. I'm trying to carry on an interview. Because it isn't about my opinions that I'm trying to do this. What I'm trying to do is just to try to get confessions from was there times? Was there times where you looked at this and thought, these decisions that I'm making right now?
Yeah, I
they
think
are.
Brittany's made a point here. She said, I can't imagine a rebel agrees that he or she is a rebel. And I think that's really why to help, if your desire is to help anybody listening that is considering, right? And I think that is really the problem, is you don't even think you're considering. Nobody, I don't think anybody, at least I can speak for myself, I'm pretty sure Jordan would agree here as your two in-person people represented here, that you don't think of yourself as the rebel. Because you're, by definition, if you're the rebel, then you're the one that's wrong. So if you're admitting that you're a rebel, then you're wrong and you're in the wrong.
Yeah.
But you don't think you're wrong.
Right.
You think the other person's in the
wrong.
wrong.
Yeah. But so then, and what I'm talking about there is that's when when you're in that loop, you've joined the dark side. And that's what I'm talking about. Because I know this won't help people like that, because they'll just they've already turned it off and said, this is a load of crap. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Because it's too deep. But what I'm after is people who are thinking, wow, you know what? I think like this. These are the kinds of things that are going on in my mind. I'm beginning to feel, and I'm beginning to experience that loss of blessing and that loss of desire to serve God. My hope is that they'll begin to realize, wow, you know what? I've got these attitudes that are hurting me, and they are rebellion. Particularly because the focus is on leadership, authority figures in your life. In that, because I think that's something that's so critical to understand, is that what we can see biblically, and your testimonies are backing that up, is that when you rebel, God goes somewhere else. You're on your own. He's not there to help you anymore. And that's a very scary place to be, because even when you're in an ideal circumstance, it still can't work for you. So that you could be pampered, you can have lots of people helping you and stuff like that, but it's not helping you spiritually. You're still not wanting to pray. You're still not wanting to get a hold of God. Those kinds of things. That's all gone. That part of your life disappears, and it just becomes, doing what you want to do. How what makes you feel good. Right? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, sure.
So I'm trying to get some feedback from you, but it's hard to get it out of you, and we're almost done.
Well, because you're asking the question about like, did it benefit us, and like clearly it didn't. Like, looking back at like all the experiences, and at the time, I'm being totally honest. At the time, I did not see that myself as doing well. I did not think I'm doing really well now that I'm free.
Yeah.
And I never felt that. I never felt like I was free. I just felt like it's only a matter of time till things get better. You're the problem.
Right.
Not me. I'm not the problem. I'm not the reason I'm not fruitful. I'm not the reason there's no inspiration in my ministry.
Yeah.
It was always you.
Right.
And so I constantly was blaming you,
right,
or the circumstances in our church, that I'd start looking at everybody else as the problem.
Right.
And that's the reason why I'm not fruitful.
Right.
I'm not inspired. And the reason why I can look back confidently and say that is because when the transition happened, all of that changed. I was no longer looking at anybody else to blame. It was totally looking at myself.
Okay. So talk about the transition.
Okay. Yeah. That's actually kind of an easy one because if I'm honest, it wasn't that long ago, relatively. It was actually a couple months after Elliot moved here. And I remember at the time, like, I didn't feel like I was a rebel. I didn't have like a ton of disagreements with you, but here and there we would just have these disagreements.
Yeah.
And they would be, short but potent. And they were little seeds, honestly. And looking back, that's kind of how they played out. But when Elliot moved here, he's inspired. He's got all these ideas. He's starting to do stuff in the church, and I just felt like, like I was a failure. And so I started looking at myself like, this is ridiculous. And then you were promoting him. All of a sudden, I started getting the same attitude against you. And the reason why I felt the way I felt was because you were promoting Elliot. And so I'm looking at that like, this is just trash, man. Like, he's literally doing stuff that I had talked about doing, like putting lights in the ceiling, these round lights. I'd actually bought some lights, put them up in the ceiling. You said, no, we're not going to do that for whatever reasons at the time. And Elliot came in, started talking about these lights, and you put them up. And I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. I remember talking about Clarissa. I was like, didn't you just recommend that like a year ago? And I was like, yeah, this is just ridiculous, whatever, And so I tried to shake it off, but my mind started tending back towards this legitimate rebellion. And I remember you called me, and I knew something was wrong. And so I will say that I this isn't like an arrogant statement at all. To my credit, I need a fast. Something's not right. I'm not right. I'm not feeling right. This isn't right. I shouldn't feel like this. So I started fasting. Day one of the fast. It was a Monday. It was that weekend we were gonna have our area wide rally, and you called me and said, "Hey, you want to come over? I want to chat or something." I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna." You said, "If you want to get dinner," I said, "Well, I'm fasting." So I'll come over at this time. I'll be done with dinner by then. And so I came over to your house. And you wanted to talk about something. Here I am thinking he knows what's going on. He's going to talk to me about it. But you brought up something completely different. And so I brought the conversation back into that, and we just had this blowout argument. It was the worst conversation you and I for sure had ever had. And it was really, really verbally violent, and the best way to put it. And so I'm sitting there and I'm just spouting my opinions. And you're talking to me like, like literally it's like a verbal fist fight. It was a really, really bad conversation. But I said something, and it was very, very spiritual what happened. And it was very, very dynamic for me personally. It was the first time I'd ever experienced something like this. But I literally heard God speak to me and say, "You are talking to the wrong person right now." And I felt like God was standing behind you telling me to shut up. You're crossing a line. And that's exactly the last thing I heard from God is, you're crossing a line. And right away, that misunderstanding I had as a kid of authority and the structure of the church, the place of discipleship, who I was in the relation to authority, all came into clear perspective. And I shut up. I didn't say anything else the rest of the time you were talking. I think you talked for like another 15, 20 minutes, and I just said nothing. And in my mind, I was like, I'm still not right, but I know I'm wrong. And there was something there. And so I continued on with my fast. The next day I went to prayer in the morning. I literally couldn't even pray. And I sat there and said, God, I don't even know what to pray right now. My mind was in a spin, and I felt the same type of mental turmoil that I did when I was on drugs. And I thought, this isn't right. So I called Pastor Jason Sanchez, who's a very good friend of mine. I called him and I told him what was going on. He said, bro, I'll be praying for you. He said, I'll pray with you. He said, that's fast. I said, I'm already fast. He said, I'm going to fast with you. And so he starts praying and fasting with me. He said, if you need somebody else to talk to, call Pastor McCarthy. Talk to him. Talk to the area leader. Don't just hold this in. And he's trying to help me. And so I finished the fast. I'm praying. I still didn't feel any clarity. The first sermon of the rally, God just, right between the eyes. It wasn't coddling. It was very direct. It was convicting. And God literally through the whole.
What was it about?
I don't even remember. Oh no, it was about Samson. Actually, I was bald at the time. And one of the statements he made was, your hair can grow back. During the rally. He said, your hair can grow back. And it was funny because he looked my way when he said it. And I'm sitting there, and
you brother, your hair.
The preacher didn't know me. He didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
But he said those words, and it was like, I think it was Mark Olson that was preaching. And he said that, and it was like God literally said, if you're obedient, it's almost like what he told Cain, if you do well, you'll be accepted. And immediately God I felt clarity, I felt direction, I felt humbled, very, very humbled. And I felt like God was still involved, and God was saying, this is something you need to deal with. Because it's going to catch you again if you don't deal with it now. And since that moment, my attitude has been totally different. And I mean that genuinely. There have been situations that challenge that, and I'm not going there. I'm going there. And so my inspiration in church ministry, my attitudes towards you, my attitudes towards people in the church, towards Elliot, have changed drastically. And my wife can attest to that. There have been times where my wife is like, babe, that was a decision. That was a really, I'm impressed with that decision. And I'm not saying that's my credit. Something changed.
Yeah. And so, so you have the one scenario where you have, in your situation, you have this problem, me, and the answer is to leave, and you go, and it doesn't change anything. You stay the same. You're not as challenged to deal with those issues, but you're still rebelling and not going to church and doing this and doing that and the other things, and still having these issues of rebellion. And then here you are, nothing has changed in terms of the environment, only the decision that you've made inside of yourself, and that has changed everything, the dynamic of everything inside of you. And so this is what I really wanted to bring out, because for me personally, having been a Christian for as long as I've been a Christian, I've watched people leave our fellowship, and they have all kinds of reasons why that was the right decision. And it's most of it, the majority of it, there are websites all over the place still, and Pastor Mitchell's been dead for a few years, still accusing Pastor Mitchell for their problem, for their issue, that Pastor Mitchell was the reason why I am the way that I am today, kind of a thing, and are probably never going to get over it because they're rebels, because the issue is authority. The issue is not, if Pastor Mitchell all of a sudden got, for whatever reason, God came down and said, Pastor Mitchell, or me, you can even put me in there, I'm going to be just one of the members of the congregation, and somebody else is going to lead. That would all change. That rebellion that was focused on me would focus on other leaders. It would just move from the one to the other. Because it isn't about the leader. It isn't even about whether the leader has problems or not. And we didn't actually get into it. We don't have a lot of time to go into it. But that's what you can draw out of the story of David and Saul. Is that Saul was the epitome of the classic worst leader ever. You can't have a worse leader than somebody who says publicly, I'm going to kill him because he's a more righteous man than I am. Saul said these things publicly, and yet David didn't change. David didn't become a rebel.
Yeah.
This is the core issue when it comes to rebellion and getting free from rebellion. Is you have to understand, and that's like I said, I don't expect to help a real rebel, but somebody who's leaning, just to realize what's going on in your heart. Are you the kind of person that blames people for your problems? Because if you are, you're probably a rebel. Because you're already there. You're already in the place. Well, I never do anything wrong. It's always somebody else. It's always somebody else who's the reason behind it. If that's the way that you handle things, it's their fault. And it doesn't matter whether or not you have evidence. The issue is that even if you have evidence that this person has been this way, you do not have evidence for being the way that you are. You have evidence that shows why you made the bad decision to become a rebel, and all the consequences of that.
Yeah.
What are going to happen in your life. Yes, I'm sure. Yeah, put Clarissa or Brittany says, "Put me in, coach. I've got examples from ages 14 to 19. I'll help you out." And then Anthony wrote 14 to 27. So, but this is the key, and this is the thing I think is interesting, is because of people. What I've watched over the years is that it's interesting for me to watch is when somebody goes there, they go to the dark side and they become a rebel. I'm the worst guy on the planet. But it's interesting that when they stop rebelling, they don't stop the rebelling and then go, you know what, I'm not a rebel anymore, but I still think you're a horrible person. It all goes away. It's like, you know what, I realize, this is me. This is my problem. This is not you, and it's not how you're handling things, and it's not what you're doing. This is something inside of me, how I respond to people like you who are in authority over me and are saying and doing things that I don't like, not that are wrong, that I don't like. And like I said, I didn't even get into it. The idea of, your pastor can be really rude, that kind of a statement, it's often people who have a completely different personality than me. And I would probably look at them and say, well, I know your pastor's a sissy.
Yeah.
To their disciple, because we have different personalities. Where some people, they're really afraid of offending people. And then there are other people like me who aren't afraid of offending anybody. Neither one of them is wrong. It's just a different personality. But for some people, they prefer one over the other, and so that's why this is so important.
There was a couple questions that weren't actually answered. Anthony's question about, does rebellion create justifications for not having to take personal responsibility?
Oh, does rebellion create justifications for not having to take personal responsibility for being biblically obedient? Well, yeah, that's kind of part of what I wanted to bring out in this, is that whole idea of, when you have alibis, for why you're acting the way that you're acting, that's not taking responsibility for your actions. It's as simple as that. You are a rebel.
Yeah.
You don't want to take responsibility, and it's not my fault. And more often than not, it's the one in charge's fault. Ultimately. And that's always how this plays out. And that's why why rebellion always focuses on, bosses and teachers and parents and pastors, is because these are people that are put in positions of prominence, and they're put in positions of responsibility, authority. And, that's why the Bible has to lay out for us that you need to understand this, because it's the nature of the devil. The devil, all the things that we've talked about, you see in the devil, all these issues, the devil makes excuses, he practically he does destroy,
Abstain.
Job's family.
Oh,
he destroys Job's family, and then he comes back And God says, so what about Job? And what does he do? He gives him an excuse.
Yeah.
No. It would have worked.
Yeah.
It would have worked. And see, that's the spirit of rebellion.
Yeah.
Is that even when you're wrong? No. It would have worked if this happened, or that if you hadn't have done, then this would have happened.
Yeah.
You know, that's the spirit of rebellion, is excuses and blame. You know, and it always takes the shape of those who are in authority, whether it's just like a band leader, you know, or a pastor or whatever. And it's always the case, you know, it's always the case. People, I'm quitting this band because I don't like the leader, you know, and it's those kinds of things, you know. Bands, they do that anyway, you know. Worldly bands break. Why do they break up? Because they try to do it with nobody's in charge, and then somebody says somebody's got to be in charge, and they say, well, I don't want to be part of this.
Yeah.
You know, and that's always it. Here they are making millions of dollars, you know, doing what they love to do, but they're willing to chuck it all because they can't get along. They won't get along, and that's what happens to the rebel. The rebel, their lives are jacked up, you know, but they're like what you said. They're expecting that once the problem goes away, then that's not going to be the case anymore.
Yeah.
And so once that problem goes away, everything's going to be fine. And it's just not true. And it's a game the devil plays with people, you know, because he knows the score.
There's one more question that wasn't answered. So once someone recognized that they are in rebellion, how do they get out?
Well, okay, good. Thanks. Yeah, so that's the issue is when you recognize you're in rebellion, you have to repent of your attitude towards those in authority over you. You know, you cannot. I'm trying to think of a way to describe it, because it out of my own life, you know, because I did have the one instance I've shared before, the one instance where, you know, Pastor Warner, you know, and I love him, and this is all behind me now. But my Pastor Warner, there was a situation where he said something to me that I totally disagreed with, completely disagreed with. And it was partly because of a lack of the right information. He was being fed the wrong information from somebody else and said something, and then got upset with me because I didn't do something that I had actually done. But because of how things were going already, there was no way I was going to fix it at that moment. And I kept pushing. I'm going to fix this. You know, you're not going to accuse me. You know, the rebellion's starting to come up. You're not going to accuse me in front of all these people. You know, I should have just said, you know, oh, this is out of control. You know, let me just shut up. And even my friends told me later on, you should have just shut up. Why didn't you just shut up? You could have dealt with it earlier or later. You know, why didn't you just shut up? You know, and it's, well, because it's rebellion. I'm being unfairly treated. You know, I want vengeance. You know, and so I went through a period of time just like what you described. I wasn't doing well. I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to come to church. I didn't want to read because I don't want to see him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but if that was all it was, is that I didn't want to see him, why wouldn't I still want to come to church? You know, he's not the church. I don't come there and just watch Pastor Warner stand in the pulpit and there's nobody there. There's tons of people there, tons of friends of mine, and I don't want to go. God is there, and I don't want to go because it's not, I'm focusing it on Pastor Warner, but it's me and God where the problem is. And everything's falling apart. And kind of like what you said, God spoke to me and said, if you don't deal with this, you'll die, he'll be fine. You know, and I had to just accept that. You know, that I wasn't going to be able to remedy this situation. It was too many moving parts for me to get my vengeance, to get Pastor Warner to come to me and say, Dave, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said that. You know, it's like, no, it's too late. You know, it's down the road now. You're just going to have to get over it and go on with life and not let this bug you anymore. And I was. And since then, life has all of a sudden been really joyful, you know.
Yeah.
And there's times where Pastor Warner has you know, not recently, but there were times during that time where I got called on the carpet for something, you know, because I'm not perfect, you know, and I made mistakes and I get called on, but I never took it personally. It never became this, oh, you're just after me. It's a vendetta. You're just personally attacking me. And there were things that were said, that were, I mean, a situation that I was in was, you wouldn't have expected it to be. It was a David and Saul situation that I was in. I was David and the other guy was Saul. And this guy, Saul, who's calling my pastor, telling him I'm doing things that I'm not doing. And Pastor Warren's calling me, so I got a call from Saul today, and he said that you did this. And I said, no, this is what happened. I did this. This is what I said, and this is. Oh, so he told me that you took off and you didn't even tell anybody anything. You weren't accountable. And no. I talked to this person. I talked to that person. I talked to the other person. He wasn't there, but he's just listening to his own thoughts. And so, fine. Sailed right through it, no problem. Had no problem with my relationship with God. I had no problem with my relationship with Pastor Warner, and I had no problem with my relationship with Saul. We were able to patch it up. And now we're friends. We see each other. I don't think about it. I don't think, remember how you treated me? Remember the things you did? Remember how you almost destroyed my family? I don't think that way. It's just not there. It's like, I'm so glad, that I learned that lesson years and years ago, that God is bigger than all this stuff. And the reason why we get into that kind of situation, we need to wrap it up, but the reason why we get into that situation of feeling like somebody is wrecking our lives is because subconsciously we know God's not even helping us anymore. It's not something that's out there at our emotional level where we can acknowledge it, but we know God's not helping us anymore. Yeah. Because if he was helping us, what would we care? No, God's going to take care of them, no problem. And your life would be fine. Your life wouldn't be doing bad. Your life would be fine. And so that's why these things are so important. So hopefully this has been helpful. I feel like you guys were maybe a bit nervous that I was going to throw you under the bus or something, but
if I'm honest, it was. I didn't feel that. Okay. What I did feel was, if I'm being honest, it's hard. It's not exactly an easy thing to dig up some of this stuff.
Oh, okay. That's fair enough.
It's raw.
Yeah.
It's like, this is us, essentially bearing our deep, dirty selves. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm glad you did, because I think it's going to help people. I really do think that people are going to be helped by this, because it's not, we are all rebels. I actually had my final question in there, but not to get into the details, is can you truly be a former rebel? And the answer is no. It's not physically possible to be a former. It'll always rise up. Yeah. I still have.
I was actually going to say, because you were saying this former rebel, and I was actually going to say, so former rebel, and I was actually waiting for the opportunity to tell you, well, I'd say more like a recovering rebel. Because these opportunities always present themselves.
Yeah, but it's not even a recovering rebel. It's the fact that we have rebel tendencies. I think that the people who say, and if the words come out of your mouth, I'm not a rebel, you are a rebel. I mean, you just have to accept that as a fact. You are a rebel, because everyone who is dealing with their rebellion knows they are a rebel. The only people that aren't dealing with the rebellion is the rebel, because we are rebels by definition. We're sinners. We're rebels against God. And so it's very important for us to understand that. And so I appreciate the questions and some of the things were said. And maybe I underestimated that this would be such a difficult thing for you guys. But I do appreciate very, very much that you did actually do it. And we actually talked about the possibility of maybe not doing it just even yesterday. And so I think it went really well. And I think it's going to help a lot of people. So I'd really like to get any kind of feedback. I don't care about the, likes and things like that on YouTube and stuff like that. Text me or let somebody know that that knows me if this has helped you, because I really do want to see people helped by the things we're doing. And I really do believe this is going to be a very, very helpful podcast for people. So we will see you all next week. Back to normal programming.
Oh, we're still there. Hey, look at that.
Not yet.
It tricked you.
Not yet. Let's try one more.